Good morning, everyone. Thanks very much for coming. I'm Lee Bailey from the International Energy Agency's Media Relations team. It's great that you're here to hear from Dr. Birol, our Executive Director. He's just come from the College of Commissioners, to which he had been invited by President von der Leyen as an honored guest speaker. Dr. Birol has very little time this morning, so if you could please make your comments or your questions succinct. And as always, please identify yourselves by your name and the name of your outlet. And with that, Dr. Birol will give some short remarks, and then we will move to questions. Dr. Birol.
Thank you very much, Lee. Good morning, dear colleagues. It is a pleasure to be back to Brussels. The reason I am here in Brussels is upon the invitation of Madame von der Leyen, the President of the European Commission. I had a productive bilateral meeting with the Madam President, discussing the global energy markets, the challenges we are facing today globally, and we also discussed the European energy challenges, including the European electricity prices. And after that, I addressed the college, the commissioners, discuss again the current global energy market situation, but also different European challenges Europe is facing today. I would say it was an extensive and productive day, and I have still some meetings in Brussels, and I thought, following the advice of my colleague Lee, to spend a few minutes with yourselves, and if you have any questions, I will try to answer. Lee, please, over to you.
All right. Please, go ahead.
Thank you. Kate Abner with Reuters. Dr. Birol, one of the results of the 2022 energy crisis was that the EU agreed to phase out Russian oil and gas. In your discussions with the EU and European governments, have you discussed whether they should rethink that decision? And what are your thoughts on whether Europe should reopen the door to Russian gas?
Thanks, Kate. We'll take a couple questions, please.
Ewa Krukowska, Bloomberg News. Dr. Birol, what kind of discussions have you had so far on a stockpile release? Will we see one? What would be the conditions that would trigger it?
Elena, please.
Hi, Elena Giordano from...
Slowly, I'm just writing down the questions. So, yes, please, over to you.
Yes, one of my questions is, a topic of discussion is the reopening of the electricity market design. We know the Commission is under pressure from different groups that want to reopen it and some that don't want to. I would like to know what is your view on that, and also because of the situation we're in and the possibility of an energy crisis, many people in Europe would tend to vote, we think, for politicians that offer a very simple solution to lower energy prices. So I would like to get a bit your view on that, and what are the best tools Europe has to defend itself from this kind of scenarios and from an energy crisis.
Perfect. It's okay to answer this? Okay. The first question is from Reuters. You are right. The current the crisis in the Middle East in some quarters leads questions about the Russia, whether to go back to Russia or not. Of course, this will depend the countries their own decision. But my personal view is, first of all, one of the Europe's historical mistake was the over-reliance of its energy sources on one single country, which is Russia. And the Commission has announced that as of 2027, they will not import any more Russian energy. To look at this from a broader perspective, we know that the world will receive a lot of LNG to the markets in the next few years from US, from Canada, from Qatar, from Australia. Given the bitter experience Europeans had with Russia, given the very fact that there will be a lot of LNG anyways coming to markets, And the gas markets turning from the markets of sellers to buyers, I think, to look Russia as an alternative option for getting gas will be economically and, in my view, politically wrong. The second question from Eva about our stocks, the stock release. So I should first tell you that today there is a plenty of oil in the market. I repeat, there is a plenty of oil in the market. Our problem is a problem of dislocation. It's a problem of logistics, and this is a serious problem. And it is creating challenges for many countries, and for some countries more than the others. And I know that the several governments are trying to address this serious challenge. In the last few days, I was on the phone with the ministers, many ministers from producing countries, such as the United States, Brazil, Saudi Arabia, Azerbaijan, Norway, Canada, to give you a few examples, but as well as some consuming, importing countries. European Commission today, I am with Madam President and Commissioner Dan Jorgensen, but with UK, with Turkey, Singapore, India, Minister Puri of India, Japan, Korea. There is a lot of effort going on in order to solve this problem, and everybody is trying to find a solution. Now, as far as the stocks, Iea stocks are concerned, I can tell you that based on my discussion with the Iea member governments and looking at the current market conditions, I can tell you that all options are on the table. But there are no plans for a collective action at this stage. We are facing a temporary disruption, a logistical disruption. I said, and I repeat, there are no plans for a collective action at this stage. But different countries have different domestic contexts and different domestic options. I have, last Tuesday, I have convened an extraordinary governing board meeting in Paris to discuss the current market conditions and to have an initial assessment of the energy impact of the ongoing war in Middle East. We will continue to follow this issue and being active there. The third question from the what to do to lower electricity price, or what kind of options Europe has to meet the electricity demand growth. Of course, Europe will still import for its electricity generation natural gas years to come, but I believe it is in the European countries' interest for their energy security and for the sovereignty of the European countries to make more of their renewable energies, solar, wind, and others, and making a strong comeback for the nuclear power. This is something that after Russia's invasion of Ukraine, it get an important boost, and I hope that we will see a continuation of this trend, both renewables and the nuclear power should be the pillars of the European electric system. And again, we will definitely use gas as well.
Let's see, Ian, please.
Thank you very much, Ian Johnson from the Financial Times. Oil is about $80 per barrel at the moment. Do you think that's a reflection of short-term tensions in the Middle East, expecting this to subside? Or do you think that's an accurate reflection of the way in which the conflict is going as on the markets? And just a second question, if I may, on stocks in Europe of gas dropped to 30%, and in some cases much lower in certain countries. Do you think that Europe has sufficient stocks as we come back to Asia?
Okay.
Argus, please.
David from Argus. Two questions. One on,
Everybody has two questions in Brussels. It is not like Paris. Yes.
if required, what does that mean in terms of releasing stocks? And then secondly, reflectively, do you think the US President Donald Trump sufficiently considered the effect on oil supply from his actions?
And one, please, only one from the Times.
Gina Smiley from the New York Times. Thanks for taking my questions. Simply, are you worried that this could become a crisis like 2022? And if it does, is Europe prepared for it?
Okay. Okay. One more and then I finish. Yeah, I have to really go. Yeah.
Osama bin Javid, Al Jazeera, English. So I've just come from a suppliers meeting from the LNG suppliers, and they say, well, if the wind doesn't blow and the sun doesn't shine, LNG is still going to be there, not just as a transition fuel,
Yeah.
but also because of the increasing demand that you've mentioned in your report as well. So how difficult do you think this situation can become? Because you said this is a small bump in the road because it's a logistical crisis right now. But if this carries on, what risks do you foresee for Europe specifically? And do you feel, coming back to my colleague's question, like 2022, Europe sleepwalking into another crisis?
Okay. So I start with maybe with FD with Ian. Ian, welcome to Brussels, by the way, leaving Paris to coming to Brussels. The question from our colleague from Argus, what does it mean if required, based on our the regulations? We need to our governments to agree for a stock release and to decide that this market conditions justifies a stock release. But once again, at this stage, we are not there. There is no, at this stage, any plans for a collective action. At this stage, we speak. Now, with the question about the U.S. president, this is a issue that I focus more on the energy issues, which brings me to the question on the last question on the LNG. And our colleague from Al Jazeera coming from the LNG producers meeting. As I said, dear colleagues, there will be, we expect in the next 5 years, a huge amount of LNG wave, about 300 BCM of new LNG coming. Just think about this. The LNG industry is a industry for 3-4 decades. What this industry has built in the last 3-4 decades, the half of it will hit the markets in the next 5 years. This would mean that there will be a lot of LNG. This would mean there will be a downward pressure for the prices, and most importantly, 75% of this LNG will be flexible. So I believe this would open the doors for the US LNG, Canadian LNG, Qatari LNG, and Australian LNG to be a part of the energy mix in Europe, of course, in Asia and the rest of the world. Of course, we will look at this LNG markets much more clearly after this crisis is over, but the projects are going on, and there will be plenty of LNG coming to the markets.